Hello. Today we will be reviewing Taking Icarus Home by Susan Palmer, as appeared in Asimov's science fiction, January-February 2019. The author did a very good job in creating an amazing setting for the plot and characters to inhabit. Everything from the world building and reasons behind character actions were very well fleshed out and greatly enjoyed. The Sunrunners, one of the factions, the main faction in this story, was definitely one of the more amusing factions I've read in a science fiction book in a long time. And I greatly enjoyed that. Just the right blend of anarchist crazy with just freeloading rich people. It was really fun. So the story plot follows the POV character coming across a life pod on their way through a trade route in the Barrens, a barren blotch of space with very little in it. They pick up the life pod and find a person badly burned inside. The pod seems to have scurfed the surface of a star rather close, and this kicks off the mission of our POV and the plot. The story then progresses to the station where the Sunrunners are, and the POV finds that they control all the water. Being the first ones in the system, they control all the water in the Barrens, or rather they have claims to all the water. And so they live their lives just being high and flying towards spaceship, their little space pods towards stars for amusement and fun, and also to get social ranks and status because, well, they're rich, so money just isn't going to cut it. So it turns out that the injured person was a runaway who went there, and I'm not going to spoil the story, but because the mystery is actually one of the more enjoyable parts of this story, as are the characters. And the author did a very good job of making the characters really fun, which is a shame that such high works were kind of risked on, in my opinion, a bad call, either by the author or the editors of Asimov, by letting it remain as a second-person POV. And Susan Palmer is a Hugo-winning author in sci-fi, so there's no question of talent involving her works, and she has been in the field since at least 2011 was the earliest date I could find for her, and she's probably been in it even earlier than that, around 2009, 2010 maybe. So she's been in the field for at least 8 years. It's just second person is a really hard thing to get right, and I'm very unforgiving on that because it pulled me out of this really amazing story that she wrote. Every time I'd see a very pronounced you or your, or you say X or you do X, and it kind of hurt the story. I feel like if it was done in first person or even third person, they would have been much better. There are also other little problems in this book, rather story. One of them is that it is a little bit clunky, and I'm not sure if this is the author's style or if it's the POV character voice, or if it's because Asimov pays by the word and so they were going to get every cent they could. I'm given to believe that it was probably a mix of the POV's character and Asimov paying by the word. One of the reasons I am given to believe this is because of one of the more striking situations here, which it reads, 2 of your 3 cargo holds are packed full of argon goods. You plan to fill the 3rd when passing Benjai, but one way or another the lifepod matter should be resolved before then. Okay, Axie, fetch it in, you order. You don't add, be careful, because Axie is always precisely careful. And that's why you asked Axie to do it in the first place instead of doing it yourself. Not that you're not careful, but maybe not precisely so. You're human after all, and your confidence is still stinging a bit from the miss in your course correction on the swing around Berib. That kind of just doesn't flow, because in one instance like that it's fine, but it's scattered completely throughout about 7-8 pages, and it just is really long and lengthy sometimes. I feel like maybe half a page and a half could have been cut out, and the story would have also benefited from that. I really did enjoy the ending. The ending of the book wraps up perfectly everything we needed to know, while also leaving us with a bunch of itching questions to reread the story again and again. I wouldn't say itching questions, because I don't think the information was needed. I don't want to spoil the ending, so I don't want to say anything about it, because I think you should buy it and read it yourself, either in copy or online in the archives of Asimov. And it's just, the ending wraps it up all so nicely. The sci-fi element, it wraps up the mystery, it wraps up the character arc for Icarus, the kid who he found in the pod. I say she, it feels like a she. Don't know why. But the POV character, it wraps up very well the POV character's arc. And yeah, I really did enjoy this story. Despite a couple of clunky paragraphs weaved throughout, the characters more than made up for that. Despite the second person POV, the story greatly much made up for that, and that's why I kind of harp about the second person, because the story is amazing. Susan Palmer actually has a book out right now called Finder. It was released sometime this year, 2019, and is her most recent work out, as far as I am aware. And I am actually interested in picking it up and reading it once I get the money together. College and all that is definitely siphoned my book funds dry, but that's now definitely near the top of my reading list. I would like to see what she's fully capable of in a longer piece work, and I'm sure that Miss Palmer will be using the conventions that I'm most used to, so I don't mind being pulled out of my comfort zone, but the U was definitely painful throughout the entire thing. I'm sure by the third or fourth read through I would have just glossed over them, but still, I would have loved to have read this as an I, me, and I'm thinking about just scratching out the you, yours, and putting those in instead, because this was an amazing work. I feel like the author was experimenting, and I wish, if this is what they use on their experimental pieces, their regular pieces are going to be pretty amazing, because this was a really amazing story. The plot was very well handled. The setting was very enjoyable, and the characters, the factions, were some of the more enjoyable ones I've read in sci-fi in a long time. So yeah, that was Taking Icarus Home by Susan Palmer. Again, I'm not going to spoil or tell you anything more about it, because I think you should read it yourselves. See you next week.